Welcome to Build Out Brief. This is Jim Kunkel, and I so appreciate your support of the Build Out live stream that broadcasts each Wednesday at noon Eastern Daylight Time. The live stream that you're watching right now will be starting in just 1 minute. Let me take this opportunity to talk about Build Out Brief. This content series is a result of viewers like you who overwhelmingly requested that I add a supplemental series to Build Out that centers on professional business topics, is more focused, and global on guests. If you're thinking about starting a live stream, then StreamYard is a platform for you. It's what I use to build you Build Out Brief. After the stream, see the comment or the description section for my special savings referral link. Now, when it comes to having a professional live stream and winning over viewers, you need to make sure that your graphics and supporting promotional items are the best. All of the creative content for Build Out and Build Out Brief are designed and produced with Canva. You should check out Canva. See the comment or description section for my special Canva referral link. Welcome to Build Out Brief. I'm Jim Kunkel, and joining me this evening is Sam Navarro from IPC Industries. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Hey, Sam, for those that might not know you, could you provide your background and also talk a little bit about what IPC Industries does in the industry?
Sure. So my name is Sam Navarro. I've been in the paints and coatings business for about 20 years now. I actually started off as a delivery driver in a paint store. I've worked my way up. I've gone through NACE 1, 2, and 3. I was lucky enough to work for the manufacturing side, the specification side, did a little bit of inspection stuff, and then I got into the contracting business, working for some of the larger Softcraft and just coatings companies around in the Texas Gulf Coast area. Then I came on board over at IPC Industries about 3 months ago. We're regionally based just south of Houston, Texas. We're a smaller tank company that's really focused on bringing back that craftsmanship level and that regionally based, strong company. We're not, out there running around chasing the next project. We really try hard to partner with our customers and build long-lasting relationships.
Very good. You and I have been friends for, I think, over 8 years now, and we always seem to encounter each other more at trade events, trade shows, and conferences. And so this is going to be an awesome stream with you, talking about the 10 rules of trade show etiquette. And Sam, I didn't know if you were aware of this, but in the United States, and I'm sure this is probably a global thing, is that the number 2 revenue generator for business to business is trade shows and conferences. And now that we're pulling out of this pandemic, and both you and I have done some trade shows and conferences, you more than I, we've been noticing some bad habits that have intensified, some that have crept in that are new. And so this is a great opportunity for us to, as senior fellows in the business development and sales arena area, to address with some of the obviously younger generation, but also those professionals too, getting back into the game of getting out there, doing trade shows, exhibits, and conferences and things like that. The first rule that I wanted to cover is going to be greet your booth visitors warmly. And a lot of times when you approach a booth, if you're a prospect or you're getting trying to get some information, you typically see that there's no one really there to greet an individual coming in. You have booth personnel. Sometimes they're standing around talking with each other, sitting down, they're doing other things, not focused on. Now, there are some exhibitors that do have booth greeting, and that's awesome, but we find too often that's not the case. What's been your experience, and what would you recommend for booth personnel when it comes to greeting the visitors that come to booths?
So unfortunately here, especially with COVID and now kind of coming out, it's sad, but it seems that folks have almost forgot how to engage in face-to-face conversations. They're now so used to doing what we're doing right now, where we're behind a laptop or, on a phone or texting with customers, that they're shy. And that trade show, that's your opportunity to capture as many people just coming by. It's like, the old duck hunt game, the Mario Brothers duck hunt. where they're coming by you. It's just your job is to go and get them, and you have a lot of competition around you at some of these things. And so you have to be attentive as you're going through these events. You have to be up there smiling, not sitting down, and try to bring these people in. A warm smile, reading their name tag as they're walking up, and calling them by their first name. One of the things that I've always done is I get the attendees list a couple days in advance. I highlight all the people that I'm looking to meet. If I see a guy walking with a specific polo that has his company's name, I go through that list trying to find out which one of the guys it's going to be and what he does. And by the time he walks past me, I already know his name and his position at the company and probably where he lives. So it's just trying to go out there and bait that hook and actually snag it.
Yeah, being prepared, that's the most critical and important thing. There's a lot of resources that are out there available from a lot of different organizations or trade groups that do have these trade shows. The second rule, which is very critical, and I see this actually done several different ways, is to get contact information. Rule number 2 is to get the contact information. Like you said, you're reading people's name tags. I've had experience where I've gone to a booth and there's someone just scanning everybody and they're not qualifying them. And the goal is to qualify a attendee who's coming to your booth to see if they are a fit for your company, your organization, your product, or your service.
Sure.
Once you're able to kind of quickly identify them as a potential prospect, you obviously want to engage them by asking them probing questions, open-ended questions to see exactly how serious are they. Are they looking to purchase equipment? Are they looking for a service? Or are they just basically there at the trade show or the conference and just kind of going booth to booth just as a normal practice that they do? Getting that contact information is so critical. And I've seen and I've experienced where a lot of times the booth personnel will sometimes forget to do that, or they'll say, here's my business card. Give me a call if you're interested in this. But there are those, obviously, that are very well in tune with it and do make sure that they get the contact information so that they can do follow-up. What has been your experience with getting contact information?
So I'll give you both sides. I'll give you when I'm working a booth, and then I'll give you when I'm walking a show, and kind of my approach to those. So when I'm working a booth, I've always had, if it's a 4-day conference, I have 4 different days: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I have each day with a spreadsheet that I can have a name, title, contact information. And I go in, and every guy that I talk to, I try to grab their card, but worst case scenario, I put their name down, what they do, who they work for, and I try to get their number. Then I ask them to come by the next day. And if they come back the next day, I write them down on the second day, and then I mark them on the first day and the second day because I got them to come by twice. The real trick is if you can get them to come by multiple times, because by the end of the trade show or conference, you might be a little bit buddy-buddy, right? You might have been able to talk about where they went to dinner the night before, or, catch that they were going to play a round of golf that afternoon or something like that. And you can ask those, and that's really when you start making it personal. So collecting that data is 100%, the most critical part of it. A lot of companies, unfortunately, they rely too much on the scanner to give them the data. And I don't input all of my information into that. And so it's one of those things that you're going to get this list of 4,000 attendees that came by, and one of your people scanned, 3,998 of them. And now you're trying to filter this massive list when, to be quite honest with you, probably only 5-10% of the people that walk past your booth are real, revenue generators. So the pencil, I'm a big, notebook taker. I carry my notebook everywhere. I write notes down as I go. And so I do all of that. Now, when I attend a trade show, I kind of do something a little different. I get an exhibitors list and I mark asterisks by every single vendor that I want to watch or go and visit with. I go to the trade show. I don't speak to anyone. I go there and I try to find where each of those are. And I find if they're actually knowledgeable, and I kind of listen into their conversations, and I mark the ones that I have filtered out whether they're going to bring value or really not. And then on the second day, I'll go back and I'll do that.
Very good. I like how you do like kind of a rating system in a way. That's a pretty good recommendation there. Rule number 3, which is a big pet peeve of mine: no food or drink in the booth. Obviously, first impressions are everything, and if you've got attendees walking up the booth and you're drinking alcoholic beverage, or you're drinking a beverage, or you're stuffing your face full of food, it's going to be, look, I'm not important. It's more important for this person to eat a sandwich or drink. And I think you and I have had this conversation recently where, a lot of times people are taking their food back to their booth versus just taking turns and then getting their lunch or getting their dinner and swapping out. They're just basically go get their food, bring it to the booth and eat it. So, what are your recommendations when it comes to, food and drink at the booth?
So, poor planning is going to give you poor results every time.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have your booth schedule lined out, you're always going to fail, because you can't expect somebody to sit at that booth for 6 hours a day without a break to go to the bathroom or without a chance to go get something to eat or something to drink. Me personally, I always have water. If it's early in the morning, maybe a cup of coffee, because some of the conferences do start early. I don't ever have food there. As far as alcohol goes, I'm kind of torn. I love bourbon, right? And I love to have a beer and laugh and talk and have that camaraderie. There's certain trade shows that I attend that at 3:00 they'll bring in a bar. You certainly don't want your booth attendees to see you drinking a beer at 10:00 in the morning. That doesn't look very good on anybody, right? And so I think that it can be done, but it has to be done tastefully. I worked for a coatings company one time, and we actually had my band playing during the event. I think it was at SSPC San Antonio, or maybe it was NACE San Antonio. It was a great event, and customers loved it, and we brought a bunch of people. Would I do that now? No. But I do think that these things can become very mundane. And so sprucing it up with maybe a little cocktail bar in the afternoon as things are starting to wind down might be a way to bring in some energy. But I definitely don't recommend, booze early in the morning or anything like that. And I certainly don't recommend food.
Yeah. Yeah. And, sometimes obviously accidents can happen. And I remember at a trade show where someone had dropped coffee and kind of messed up the exhibit display, and
Sure.
that can stain, and it can be tough to remove it. So that can also be a big impactor too. Rule number 4: no chairs except for attendees. And I always say, in the planning of the booth, invest in that double padding and
Sure.
have that premium carpet, because it'll save the feet, it'll save the knees, and also too will help the staff that are attending the booth to be relaxed and comfortable. But if you're seen sitting down on chairs, and with trade show booths, you could be talking a 3-day use of a chair could cost $300, $100 a day for each chair. So you want to make sure that a prospect, a customer, is the one really sitting in those chairs.
Yeah. Me personally, I don't like chairs in a booth. I've always hated them. I came up in the industry where my boss told me no one sits down at our booth. So we didn't have chairs, period. We did have the thicker carpet. And I think it's funny to hear me saying it as I'm about to, is you're getting older. So maybe wearing comfortable shoes, where, back in the day, I used to just wear, certain things. And now I wear cowboy boots with some inserts in them if I'm going to be on my feet all day long. And you gotta know what you're getting yourself into. I feel terrible for some of these young ladies that I see that are wearing heels all day long, because it's got to just be, incredible. And so it's one of those things that knowing how long you're going to work and then having a plan in place for those hours. You should get a break, even if you get a 20-minute break every 2 hours, to just go sit down, take the load off your back, and then go back. That's better than just standing there all day long. But yeah, I'm not a fan of chairs and trade show booths. As a matter of fact, I tell quite a few people when I see them sitting down that that's a terrible way to get my attention.
Yeah, definitely. And then rule number 5: customers come first. Booth personnel need to focus on the attendees, focus on those prospects, those clients. Because if you're not focusing on them, if you're focusing on each other, or you're fidgeting doing other things, it's going to show that you just really don't have, you kind of have a lack of attention, or maybe
Yep.
even that you really don't care, or you don't want to be there. So, and I think recently, you had talked a little bit about observing a lot of that at some of the trade shows and conferences that you were attending this year.
Yeah. So you and I have known each other for a while. If you and I are having a conversation, it's our conversation. And I'm not looking at my phone, and I'm certainly not looking at others walking by, and I'm not worried about my coworkers at the booth. I'm having a conversation with you. And I feel like that one-on-one engagement is really starting to lack at some of these events, because once you engage in that conversation, even if it's not going the way that you intend, that person, they're owed your respect, and you should show them that respect and say, hey, you came into our booth to figure something out, so I'm going to give you my attention. If there's 10 people walking by, they're going to come back by. These trade shows are only so big. Unless you're talking about a couple of the, insane, massive ones, there's a good chance you're going to see these people 2-3 times. But I'm a big fan of giving people my full undivided attention.
In rule number 6, adhering to schedule, all of my professional career, I've always had a plan, a schedule for the staff to be able to man the booth. There have been times where I've been at conferences where you might have the mid part of the conference is the big party night. People are out entertaining their clients, their prospects, and they might have some late nights. The next morning or the last day, sometimes the conference will open up and there will be booths, exhibits that have no staff in them, and there's attendees walking around. So you need to make sure that you adhere to a schedule. So make sure that you cover your schedule at the appropriate time, and that exhibit booth is manned at all times, especially when the exhibit floor is open.
Yep. Yeah. So I remember one of my bosses said, if you want to hang out with the owls, you have to wake up with the roosters. And that's been kind of my whole way of life, right? Like, I do entertain in the evenings, and we go out and have a nice dinner or whatnot, but I still wake up at the same time, and I still go to the booth and do what I have to do. I will say, it's more and more companies are sending fewer and fewer people, whether it's reduction of costs or, the COVID concerns or whatever it may be. And me personally, when I go to an event, I'm pretty much booked from breakfast, lunch, dinner. I have meetings in the middle of them. I'm probably playing around a golf or two with some people. I'm going out and I'm entertaining for happy hours and things like that. So me personally, I don't jump on the booth schedule, because I typically have my entire week planned out. And so I just go and give support when needed. So if I don't have a meeting, I'll go to the booth, I'll relieve the people for a little while, and then back. But yes, a good plan needs to be put into place for sure.
And then rule number 7 deals more when sometimes you'll have happy hour events at your exhibit booth, or you'll have food that's available for the attendees. And what it comes down to is that you need to let the attendees eat first before the staff, the booth staff, will eat. In some cases, maybe the plan is to allow the staff to drink and eat along with the attendees as just part of a icebreaker networking opportunity. But a plan needs to really be laid out when it comes to having food and beverage that's going to be used as a networking opportunity, or even maybe, let's say you're doing a brand product launch or a branding event going on at that trade booth.
I'm not a big fan of food at a booth. So if one of the companies that I worked with had a booth and we were serving food, I certainly wouldn't be eating. Now, when, we had a cocktail bar and things were winding down, did I have a beer? Yes. But that's more of a conversation. But no, I'm not a big fan of food and eating. I definitely agree that that's for the customers. That's what they're there for. They don't need to see you tucked away in a corner, stuffing your face and trying to sell stuff.
Yeah. And then rule number 8 kind of dovetails into this, and it deals with minimizing the alcohol intake of the booth staff. This goes back a number of years. I remember being at a marine conference.
Oh yeah.
In a particular party city, and the booth personnel they had supplied alcohol, and they were hitting it a little bit too hard, and it was a little bit of hilarity. But I think in some cases, people walking past the booth were probably those people that were shocked. So you want to your point, I know you said about food and beverage, you want to make sure if you do have any type of alcohol, that there are some ground rules when it comes to staff and minimizing alcohol intake.
I think that there's a big generational gap. The older generation, there's a lot of good old boys, and it wasn't a big deal to see, Tom out there making a fool of himself because he's been drinking beer at the booth all day long. And I grew up with those guys, so I understood where they were coming from. But the younger generation and maybe our kind of area, they don't want to see that. And now, owners are very particular on who they send to these events. And I know me personally, like if I see folks out, whether it be at the trade show or afterwards at the bar, and they're, making fools of themselves, I really, that memory, it sticks with you. You get this stigma, and like I said earlier, we have a very large industry, but it's a small group of people. And I can tell you right now that the last couple of events that I went to, there's chatter about certain people that were going from event to event, and they made fools of themselves. And so you lose a lot of the credibility that you've been working your whole life for. I've been working my whole life to get where I'm at right now. If I go to an event and make a fool of myself, I've just taken that and did away with all of it. It's mind-boggling. You really have to start looking at it from 100 miles up, right? So I'm first generation American, and so I'm sitting here and I'm trying to beat all these stigmas. If I go out and make a fool of myself in public, I just proved everybody right. I proved everybody that yeah, you can't do this. And I say that for young men and women. They have this stigma, and if they go out and make fools of themselves, they're proving them right. So just monitor out. I'm not saying don't go out and have drinks. I'm certainly not saying don't relax and unwind a little bit, but moderation is key to everything.
Well, and also too, focus on what the goal is. The goal is to network, is to look to secure business, build partnerships, relationships. It's not about partying. So, yep. That's something to keep in mind as well. A past executive director at SSPC, Society for Protective Coatings, would say, don't get drunk and stupid. And, that resonated because it's true. You're there to network, you're there to build relationships, and you're going to do it better if you're sober and you have your head head where it needs to be during those events and after hour things.
Yeah. There are too many people right now that treat these events like vacations, and they're not vacations. Your company is paying a tremendous amount of money to send you out there. You gotta come back with something. Don't. It's not a vacation.
That's a good point. Rule number 9: listen more and talk less. I'm a big proponent of active listening. Obviously, you want to ask probing questions, but then you want to listen. And when you listen, you're going to be able to understand exactly what that prospect, what that client is really looking for, and then you would be able to respond accordingly. But you don't want to go and, as they say, you don't want to go and just keep spilling everything out, kind of tossing your candy out and saying, okay, what do you, here's all my candy. What do you like? What do you want? It's not going to work that way. You're going to overwhelm a prospect. You're going to overwhelm a client. I'm sure you're a big active listener yourself, and then you're obviously targeting what the response is to the prospect or the client.
Correct. There are certain events that are geared more towards a maintenance manager or a turnaround manager. Mm-hmm. There's certain project or events that are tailored more towards an EPC, or whatever it may be. So you don't need to talk about all the maintenance stuff with, at a marine show. It's a completely different, group of people. So knowing where you're at, knowing who you're supposed to talk to. And I love asking questions, and I like trying to go 3 questions deep on everything that I do, right? So if I can get the answers to 3 questions, there's a good chance that we can do business together. Because in those 3 questions, I'll know what your biggest pain points are.
Yeah, very good. And rule number 10, learn about the conference and trade show. This goes back to what you were saying earlier in the broadcast here. you really want to know what this conference is all about, what this trade show is all about. Now, that helps you in with your social media posting. It also helps you when you're doing those pre-event calls or touches when you're either sending emails or, yeah, again, you're doing phone calls. And it also helps you in the planning of what's going to be the game plan when you get a lead, what you're going to be able to do with that lead, and follow-ups and things like that. So it's very critical to get to know the industry that this trade show's associated with, or with the conference. If it's a certain type of industry, what's going to be the main focus, the vision, the goal of that industry, so that you can better align yourself to it.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know me, I'm all about strategy. So really figuring out who we're looking to target, trying to set those appointments up ahead of time to where they come by and see it. There's a lot of techniques that you can use to bring people to your booth. But it's a matter of knowing who's actually attending. And that's the hardest part about trade shows today, during COVID, is a trade show that once had 5,000 attendees now might only have 2,000 attendees. Out of those 2,000 attendees, 1,800 of them might be contractors and vendors. So you have a pool of, let's say, 200 owners. Out of those 200 owners, you might only have 20% of those that actually matter to your business. So you can do away with all these people, all this effort, all this, and target that specific crowd. And it's hard. It takes a lot of work. It's a lot easier to just fly to a trade show, treat it like a vacation, have fun, party all like crazy, and then not bring anything back. But that's not sustainable to a business, and that's certainly not the way that I would run my business. And so all of that effort, it's no different than when you're building a business development or a marketing strategy. It's a lot of groundwork to execute correctly.
So Heidi Brooks from VCP Sales asked a question for you. What 3 questions do you ask when you have an attendee coming to a booth?
So the number 1 is, what's your biggest headache? Number 2 is, are you looking for, long term, or are you looking for quick fixes? And number 3, how fast do you want to do it? Now, that's pretty much specific to the industrial, coatings, blasting side of the business, but there's going to be 3 to 5 questions that anyone in any market is going to be able to give you that insight, right? Are you wanting a coating system to last a year? Do you need it to last 20 years? What's your budget? What's your timeline? Do you want me to spit out 100 painters tomorrow, or can we ramp up in 6 months for this job? And all of those things, the customer is going to build on those, their, momentum questions. So you start asking those questions, and it opens the door and leads to more and more questions and answers. And that gives you a real good idea of what the customers are.
Yeah, I always looked at, trying to qualify them by trying to understand, what's their role, what do they do, what are some of the pain points that they have, and then also to your point about looking, what type of a resolution time are they looking for? Is this something immediate, or is it something long term, or is it something they're just out trying to gather information and get some additional facts and everything like that?
Well, and I think, and Heidi, thanks for the question, but I think that the other side of that is, I have a really broad network of people. I feel like I encompass a lot of folks that do a lot of things. And the other day I got a phone call from an owner, and they were in a pinch and they needed somebody to do something. I said, well, hang on 1 minute. And I hooked them up with a guy, and hopefully that they can work those things out. Same thing at a trade show. You start to hear what this customer's problems are. Just because you can't solve those problems with your services doesn't mean that you can't, try to get them hooked up, because that's when you become valuable.
Yeah. And then Heidi says, yes to all those. I ask, and what do they use now? Heidi, that's a great point, to find out exactly what's their current vendor or their current product that they're using in their projects or their solutions that they're doing. So
the only danger that I've ever seen asking that question at an event is, there's a 99.9% chance that vendor or that contractor is exhibiting or attending the same event that you're at. And depending on that customer's intentions, that could find their way back to that person, and it creates an unnecessary tension at an event. And at an event, I want to be the guy that people want to hang out with and want to, come and talk to and visit. I don't want any kind of tension or any uncomfortableness when I see a guy that may work for a competitor at the networking event.
Yeah, you never want to trash talk the competition.
It's a delicate dance for sure.
Yeah, there's other ways to beat the competition. You just have to figure out what's the right recipe to do that. And we've covered these. Obviously, these are 10 rules, but there could be 100 rules. And the other thing too, I just want everybody to understand is, some of these are saying, don't eat, don't drink, don't do this, don't do that. It's not a negative thing. It's that, as Sam said, not only in addition you're going to a trade show or you're going to a conference, there's a cost associated with that. Your time for the company. Also, too, the booth exhibit itself is very expensive. The freight, the labor that's in there. So there has to be a very well coordinated marketing plan, business development, sales plan. There has to be a good after care when it comes to what do you do after the conference or trade show is over. So you really need to stay super focused. And so that's why these rules of etiquette really need to be adhered to. It's not a negative thing. It's a positive thing, because your goal at the end of the day is to represent your company or your organization, but also too, you're there to generate a return on investment, because the only way you're going to be able to go back to the conference again and again and again is going to be if there is a return on the investment coming in. There's value in doing it. And so that's why these rules of etiquette are so critical to focus on and to take in and apply to your everyday business life when it comes to trade shows and conferences. Sam, is there any other etiquette that we might have missed in our conversation here tonight?
So I think there's three more that I'd like to throw in there,
Sure.
right? So number one, the marketing teams and these booths are incredibly expensive. And it takes a long time to design these things, to order these things, to ship them, to put them together. Don't beat them up when you're trying to put the booth up or take it down. You're tired, you want to go home. So you just go rolling everything up and you shove it in this, plastic box, and it's going to get beat up. And then you go to use it the next time and the graphics are dented, or you lost the lights, and then it causes a whole bunch of necessary stress. So always respect your marketing people and always treat that booth with respect. So that's number one. Number two, really pay attention to your appearance. Don't show up with your clothes wrinkled and unshaven, or with your hair not brushed. I mean, these are basic principles, but during some of these events, people tend to forget those things, and they won't prepare, and they show up and they look terrible. And if I'm a company and I'm paying for guys to go down there, I expect them to look as they would at home, going and calling on customers. If that's the way they look at home, they probably wouldn't be going to many events or working for us. You know what I mean? And then number three is make these things fun, because for a long time, these things have been very boring, and people get tired and they get bored of the same thing. So try to act positive, go out there with you're attending this event and this show, and you're getting to do these things. There's a lot of people around the world that would give anything to be going to face-to-face events again. So, stand tall and be happy. Try to bring some positivity to an event. And no matter if you're not having a great time, just try to be positive, because those little bitty things can really change the outcome of an event.
Yeah, words to live by. Words to live by. So let me do a preview for this Thursday evening stream on Build Out Brief. I'm going to have Carl Davenport from Project Management Innovations. We're going to be talking the importance of global expansion for manufacturers, and actually doing a case study on a Republic of Ireland operation. And it's going to be a real good conversation and discussion that we're going to have. Sam, how do people get in contact with you?
So you can email me at sam.navarro@ipcindustries.lp.com. Find me on LinkedIn, Sam Navarro. We've got some exciting stuff coming out.
Excellent. Good to hear that. And everyone, thank you for watching this broadcast this evening. You can also catch the replay here on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. And please like and share this with other colleagues, because Sam and I talked about some really important rules of etiquette here with the trade shows and conferences. Sam, thank you so much for this evening.
No problem. Thank y'all very much. And next time you're out at the trade shows, just remember it's showtime and you just got to roll with it.
Amen.
All right. Thanks a bunch. Go Astros.